Thank you. All right. Nice full house. Can we kill the sad music? There we go.
You know why I said that?
Well, welcome everybody. I think we are checking to see if Mike has got the stream going before we officially get started here. But meantime, y'all come in, make yourself at home. There's seats up front, or yeah, there's a few seats up front still. So you guys want to come sit? I'm calling you out. Yeah, there's seats up here. Got two seats together here. Don't sit on the piano. Been going? Okay, so welcome to the Careers in Audio panel discussion. So my name is Steve Barsotti, and I am the chair of the San Diego section of the Audio Engineering Society. And we have been putting on a whole bunch of different types of events and have a whole bunch more coming up. And this one is what we hope to be the first in a series of panel discussions about all the variety of options in the world of audio. So before we get deeper into that, I want to ask Mike to come up and just say a little hello and describe the program, the studio that we're in. That was clumsy.
Hi, thanks, Steve. Welcome, everybody. It's great to have a packed house here in the San Diego City College recording studio. This is the first event of this type that we've hosted, and the first panel discussion we're hosting here with our new video live streaming system. So hello to everybody out there in YouTube land. Thank you for tuning in. If anyone you know missed is missing this, it'll also be recorded. Just go on the YouTube channel to check it out. If this is your first time in our studio or here at City College, welcome. We have, if you don't know, we have a 2-year AS certificate, or excuse me, a degree, as well as a certificate, both in music production technology, where we train students in live sound recording, live sound reinforcement, studio recording, sound for film and music and all that good stuff. And video games, excuse me. And we have a really active community where we're always bringing in different performing groups to record, to perform, and have stream from the studio, and so on. And it's thanks to the students in our live sound and studio recording class tonight, Commercial Music 162-262, under the direction of my colleague, Professor Bob Coslin. There he is. And they have been kind enough to run all the AV for us tonight, and hopefully everything will go smoothly. I think it will. I'm very excited also to have all these wonderful panelists, and I'm really appreciative for Steve for organizing this and for moderating tonight. So I will turn it back over to him. Thanks again for coming, everybody, braving the rain, and I hope you enjoyed tonight's panel.
So having spent the last 20 years in Seattle, this ain't right. Yeah. Okay. So big thank you and shout out to City College and Bob and Mike for hosting this event tonight and all of their collaboration. A big shout out to the class. Thank you so much for all your help in pulling this off for us. So tonight's presentation is going to be, just as the title describes, a conversation about careers in audio. Now, there's a lot of students in here studying it. A good chunk of them are from City, but students from Miramar, students from other programs from around the city. And the world of audio production means so many different things to so many different people. And I've done this kind of stuff in the past. And my interest is in really getting the panelists, and I'm going to introduce them here in just a second, to just talk about their paths and the differences in their paths. To be in audio means to be self-employed. There are positions, but they're not that many. It's a gig economy. You tend to go out there and make things work for yourself. You find your clients, you find your niche, you find your specialty, and you find your community. You find your peeps, right? And you get out there and you make that kind of stuff happen. So what I want to do is I'm gonna give the briefest of brief introductions, basically your names and what you kind of do, because I want you to tell your stories about all the details. So I'm not gonna get into any nitty gritty about like all the different things that they do because I want that to be a part of it. So I'm gonna start with putting on my old. Right, we've got Zac Ordene here, who is currently the head of the head union audio engineer for the Conrad Prebys Performing Arts Center, a part of local IATSE Local 122, right? Right.
Correct.
So we got theater sound and live sound and union rep,
Yes.
more or less.
Yes. Absolutely.
And we've got Rich Varville right next to him, who has a history in music production, but is more into films. He's a film director and producer, and he is the kind of sort that does it, he handles the entire aspect of it, including the audio. So he's got a lot of audio experience in film.
Yes, I do.
Cato Zane is an audio engineer, music producer, specializing in indie cinematic pop music, and she runs the Lost and Sound Foundry. Is that correct? Your studio?
Yep. Sorry.
Nice. That's
Forgot
all
to
right.
pick up the mic in time.
All right. And then Michael Fay at the end there is the owner and principal at Grace Note Design Studio, an audio, video, and acoustic design consultancy. So I've had the pleasure of working with both Cato and Michael in previous events, and I'm so looking forward to hearing from Zac and Rich. So what I'd like to do is we can just start on this side. The first question I have is round out your bio in terms of who you are. I just mentioned that you work at the Presby Theater, and give us your journey. I want to know, like, where did you start? And this will be for each of you. I'll have each of you give this answer. Where did you start? What did you think you were going to do with this? What the hell did you think you were doing when you were way back when, as a youngin, thinking, I want to be in audio? And how did you get from there to where you are now? And what was that journey like? And I'll have subsequent questions for things as well. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a little while.
Well, actually, it wasn't way back when. My journey started about 3 years ago in this very room. Oh, I'm sorry. My journey started 3 years ago in this very room. Very appreciative to the faculty here. I started. A good friend of mine, Tim Felton, was a professor here, and he encouraged me to start his like online history of rock and roll class, and I didn't want to be the old guy in the room, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And he encouraged me to come and take his class, and well, first off, let me go back a little bit. I was a line guy for AT&T, and I injured my back on the job. And while I was recovering, I came to the conclusion that life's too short to do something I absolutely did not enjoy, and I was not a fan of what AT&T was doing. So while I was recovering, I overcame some mental health issues as well too, and I basically came to the conclusion that life's too short to do something I hate. So I started my journey with basically the live audio class here. I think it was 208. And I've always been a fan of music. I was a drummer in grindcore bands when growing up, and my dad used to play me Allman Brothers and cool stuff like that. So I've always been a fan of music. I'm very I kind of lost my train of thought. So basically, long story short, in this very room, Mr. Joe Kucera referred me to. I basically said, "Hey, Joe, I want to do front of house. Like, I want to mix bands." And he told me, "Get in with IATSE 122." And I was like, "What is IATSE?" I had no idea what IATSE even was. And so there was a front of house position open at House of Blues, and I applied there, and I was not qualified for it in any way, shape, or form, looking back on it. And I had like my blacks on, and I was like, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to pop into the Union Hall and, just kind of I put my resume in, and it's like, just kind of put a face with the paper, kind of." So I pop in and I start chatting it up with the ladies up front, and the dispatcher, his name's Zach, popped his head out and he's like, "Hey, I have your resume right here. Just call this number. You seem like you're easy to get along with. Call this number. I will get you work." And I called that number for 3 weeks straight. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And then I finally got a loadout position at the arena for WWE. And yeah, and then it was, I put my time in there. I was rolling some feeder cable. One of the road guys said, "Hey, you're not doing this right." Took all the feeder cable I coiled out and just threw it across the arena and said, "Do it again." And yeah, that was like my first experience with, working with road guys. And they saw that I really wanted to do it and put my heart into it. And I was just telling everybody that would listen, "I want to do sound. I want to do sound. I don't care. I'll sweep floors to learn how to coil a cable properly." And I was pushing chairs at the Conrad. And once again, I was just telling everybody that would listen, "I want to do sound. I want to do sound." And they had their A1 call out one day, and they called me up and they were like, "Hey, can you manage 2 microphones?" It's like, absolutely, absolutely not a problem. So show up, and this is my first time on a professional board. I've never even touched a professional board. And we were about 5 minutes from show, and I still have no sound coming from the microphones whatsoever. So I actually Zoomed the technical director, and I was like, "Dude, this is bad. This is like really bad." And he's like, "You see that button right there that says on?" So on Yamaha boards, I know you guys got an X32 here. There's a mute button, but on Yamaha boards, it's swapped. It's an on button. So I thought I had the whole board unmuted. It turns out I had the whole board muted. And yeah, and I overcame that one little, hiccup, put on a good show, and believe it or not, they invited me back. I couldn't believe it. So I've literally gone from not knowing how to turn a channel on a board to mixing Grammy Award winning artists in a multi-million dollar venue that was designed by one of the best acousticians in the world. And I'm very, very grateful for that. So yeah, that's kind of my journey.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rich.
Oh, my journey. I think my journey might have started before a lot of you were even born. Okay, who was born before 1983? See, okay, yeah, I was right. I was right. Okay, so 1983. I was always into music. I was a musician, as a lot of people that start in sound. And my older sister was in college. This was in Colorado, and I went with her to college one day and went into like the little pub that was there. And yes, I was underage, but there was no alcohol. And there was a band playing. There's a band playing on stage, and they were doing like Motley Crue covers. And there was 2 people in this place. And I was so inspired by these guys. I'm going, there's nobody here, and these guys are playing like they're in an arena. I was so inspired that like the next day I begged my parents for a guitar. So I started learning to play guitar. And then not too long after that, I mean, I played 8-10 hours a day. I just played and played and played. I loved it. And after 2 years, I started teaching guitar. That's how much I was so into it. But along that route, you have to learn to record, right? So you learn to craft songs, and then the technical aspects that go into recording. Well, I had like a little boom box that I would play tracks into another boom box, and then I'd play those back, and that was my multi-recording system. That's how I learned. And I tell you, when you start the primitive level like that, you really learn. I mean, you learn frequencies, you learn levels, you learn all the basics like that. And then, not too long after that, I got into a real recording studio and recorded with my band. And then I just fell in love with that process. The studio, the console, the speakers, like it's intoxicating, right? He's sitting right here. He's like, I know, and it doesn't matter what style of music you're playing, it's in our soul, right? So I was just feeling it. So, but for me, I always wanted to know more. I always wanted to know more. So I would learn everything I could. And every chance I got in the studio, and we had at the time, we had like these old Studer 2-inch machines and analog consoles. You'd have to play like a piano. There was no automation back then. And so you really learned. And I think one of the things I really learned was to listen. Okay. I mean, I think nowadays, for me, I'll talk about my struggle with the visual aspect. I was talking with someone outside about that, but I think we were talking about that. But anyway, so over time, I would, I performed on stage. I mean, to this day, I've done, I think close to 1,800 live performances with various bands, did some great stuff. And then ultimately back in the late 90s, I ended up opening for Motley Crue, which was like the inspiration for me to get into rock music. And I actually got to play with them on the Generation Swine tour in 98 and 99, which, so it was just really kind of cool where that path led me. But then that was never enough. Okay. So then I got into, I produced music. I built a recording studio, worked with a lot of great engineers. Dennis Mackay, who did, oh God, he did Whitney Houston and Judas Priest, and it's on and on and on. I learned so much from him. Another guy, actually local producer, Nairobi Sailcat, that did Parliament Funkadelic, Bootsy Collins, just amazing, and learned so much from him. So it was just such a great avenue to learn, music production, but learning microphones, microphone placements, tuning of instruments, tuning of drums. I really prided myself in tuning drums and getting that right resonance, and then using the right microphones, which I'd never use a D112 ever again in my life, if you guys know what that is. It's a doorstop, it's a paperweight. We're 52s only, but anyway. So he knows what's up. So anyway, so over time, I had always done a little, little video projects here and there, and films. I loved movies. I was always into movies, and but at the time, like back in the '90s, for me, late '80s, '90s, like it just wasn't affordable. I mean, you couldn't rent. There wasn't. I think it was just like not even beta cam recorders back then, and any serious camera would cost you like $1,500 a day. So that was just out of the realm. So I took the music path and built the recording studio. And eventually, about 6 months before home recording took off, is the early 2000s, I sold everything. And I sold it all to Jamaican drug dealers, which is another story I'll tell at a different time. But
That's a different panel.
True story, true story. One of the scariest nights of my life, but they were cool. They were musicians. But so I got out of it. 6 months later, home recording took off. Computer recording just skyrocketed. And I'm so glad I got out at that time. But then it's a new challenge. I've got to learn hard disk recording now. And my struggle was the visual aspects. All right. So I started in Pro Tools as back 2002, 2003. But just watching, waveforms and, and it's the same kind of layout that we've always had, right? You record your signal, it runs through your channel strip, you got your buses, it's all basic stuff. But the visual aspect really ruined me for like 2 years. I couldn't, it was just, everything I did just sounded like crap. And it was really discouraging. So, so I think a lot of people nowadays have that advantage. You grew up with it, so it's like second nature. But an older guy like me that had to make that transition was really hard. But eventually, over years, I was performing with a band this about 12 years ago, and they said, "Hey, we need a music video." So I said, "Oh, I can do that." And they're like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." And ended up making this music video. It was very Scorsese-esque kind of storyline, and it went on once film festivals, and it was like really cool. And that really solidified, oh, this is where I need to be. So after that, I was kind of sought out for a while. I've done probably 45 plus music videos. Probably 35 of those are all story based with actors, sets, storylines. And so I kind of carved my teeth doing that, and then went into making short films. And then eventually, about 5 years ago, started doing feature films, and that's where I'm at now. But my music background, I've never lost sight on how important music is in movies. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's half the film." No, it's at least 60%, 75%. You can have a crappy picture. If you have crappy sound, it sucks, right? No excuse for bad sound, especially nowadays with the technology. So brings me to today, which I actually write, produce, direct, kind of do a little bit of everything, but this is also 40 years of experience going into this now. And I think for me, my career path started as very linear, record my guitar and figure out how I can do this, to now I'm dealing with so many aspects in script writing and producing and working with IATSE and 480 in New Mexico. But so just learning all the aspects of that, but never losing the sight of the importance of sound. So the last couple of feature films I did all the sound design in that as well. So just kind of really, interesting path to get where I am. But what Steve was saying, it's really a gig type job. You know, I never worked for anybody. I always made my own way. And I think the best part of that is your work speaks for itself, and your ability to connect and network with people, and got to be likable, you know, got to be easy to work with, all those things. But you know, I think your body of work speaks for itself, you know, and that's how I got to this point.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny you talked about the boombox thing. I had the boombox thing with a talk boy. That probably ages
Nice.
me. And it had to be a talk boy. Like I refused to get a talk girl. I was like, I want a talk boy. Anyway, so I guess my journey started in the early aughts, and I come from a very science heavy family. I love physics and science, and I love music, and I was obsessed with music. And I learned like a range of different instruments. I played like drums and punk bands and stuff, but I've never been like really good at any instrument, right? And I kind of set out as a teenager. I was like, I set out to be into the tech side of things, and so I got a gig assisting at a studio, and then I ended up going to undergrad, where I studied music and technology, computer arts and technology, and economics. And I guess the economics things helps, right? Because it is very gig based. So I did that, and then after graduation, I did some studio work, and for a while, I did a blend of studio and live sound. So the live sound was like musical theater stuff. I was working on traveling Broadways and stuff like that, and then working in studios, and the hours kind of complement each other sometimes, sometimes not. But yeah, and so I did that for a long time, and then I finally switched over to just doing studio work. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And I've had some really fun gigs along the way. So for a while, I worked for a company called Pro Studio Live, and their whole thing is they did live streams of sessions with engineers in the studio, and the engineers were like multi-Grammy winning engineers, like very, very successful. And we would do these live streams that were like 5 hours long sometimes, and it's just like a full session. They're not distilling it down and giving you tips and tricks or whatever. It was like a full session. And so what I was doing is I was hosting the show. So I had to be on camera, and I was like, I had never wanted to be on camera. I had never wanted to be the performer, and I was petrified, like I learned how to perform on instruments so that I could be a better engineer, not so I could be on stage. And so like the first time I told them all that, and they were like, it's okay. We'll work with you. We just want someone who they wanted a woman, and they wanted someone who was into the engineering stuff. And I was the choice in town. So that was fun. So anyway, they were working with me, and like the first episode that we did, I felt like I was gonna throw up. Like I thought, and you could, if you find it on, I don't know if it's still online somewhere, but like you could see it. Like I was petrified, but it was a really good experience, and I learned a lot. And the reason why I took the job is like, of course, you can't turn down that learning opportunity, because I got to ask questions and interact with them, during the show, and then forward questions from people in the chat as well. So that was a lot of fun. And I don't know, I don't have as long a story, I don't get, but
Well, you're younger.
yeah, I'm younger. Yeah, I'm in my late 30s, and yeah, so yeah, I've just been doing studio stuff since then. And past couple of years, I opened up my own studio. I worked in a bunch of the commercial studios around town, in various capacities. So as an assistant, I assisted people for a really long time. I really recommend that if you can find someone who is a mentor to you, and you can assist them, and you learn a lot, as opposed to just trying to figure it out on your own, because there's a lot that you won't know that you don't know it, right? So I really recommend that. And so I assisted for a long time, and then kind of struck out on my own after a number of years. And now I have my own studio, and it's just a small studio. It's in my garage, but it's like the garage is a separate building, and it's built out. It's like kind of in between, commercial and not as commercial. But yeah.
And you've got this YouTube channel.
Yeah, I have a
How does
YouTube channel.
And do you mind if I ask, is that monetized, or is that just for sort of fun?
It is monetized. Yeah, I don't make a ton off of it. It's not. I don't know if it's really worth it, but I do it. I started doing it because of the Pro Studio Live stuff, because I went to, it was actually an AES in like Anaheim, I think it was. number of years ago, and I was there with Pro Studio Live, and I just got people started connecting with me on social media, and it was like back when Facebook was a thing, you know, like Instagram. I think
still
I'm not sure if
use
it
it.
existed or barely existed, and so on Facebook, I started getting like 100 people trying to connect with me an hour, which I don't know what was happening, but something happened, and so I started connecting with people back, and like a lot of them had, you know, some kind of like sound console in their photo or like guitar, or, you know, so I was like, okay, this is, it's like not just bots or whatever, who knows. But so that happened, and then I was like, well, maybe I should do something with this and kind of build a community around it. And the other thing was, I was getting comments on Pro Studio Live. People were like, oh, they were assuming that I was there as like not as an engineer, you know, they thought I was there as decoration or something, which, like, I'm like, they could pick someone better if that was the goal. But yeah, so I was like, oh, this will add some credibility. It's like a business card type of thing, and it helps drive some business and you know, all that stuff. So I do it for various reasons, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello. My story is pretty long. Started out, grew up in a musical family, classically trained on trumpet, played all the way through school. Used to listen to records back when they sounded awful because the technology wasn't there, and I would sit in my bedroom and listen to these demo records that my brother got from a local DJ that were cutouts. And I kept thinking, you know, song's not bad, but the sound is awful. And that sort of got me started. I continued on the music career for a long time, was a music major in school, the first year of college. Didn't finish that. Actually quit school, got drafted, went to Vietnam, was in the Signal Corps, got out, bought some recording equipment when I was overseas. And let me rephrase that. Bought some stereo equipment. There wasn't any recording equipment for sale back then like that. Got back into a local band, and my buddy had a garage where we would rehearse, and we decided to take my equipment and set up a little recording setup. Interesting little side note there. The first mixing console we had was actually let me ask this. How many people here know who Studio West is, or what Studio West is? I would imagine almost everyone. The original owner of Studio West was Lee Carroll. Lee Carroll had a studio in his home. When I first met him, I was doing demo sessions in his house as a musician, as a songwriter. We bought that mixing console as an old rotary pot tube radio broadcast board that he ganged together to get something like 8 inputs on. And I don't remember if it was mono or stereo output. That and the tape recorder I bought in Hong Kong, and the speakers I bought in Hong Kong turned into our first studio in the garage of the band that I was playing in. First gig ever that I got paid for was recording somebody else's band in his garage. That advanced a little bit to where I decided, you know, I think I'm really interested in this. I don't want to be a musician all my life. I'm really interested in the technology. Started reading trade magazines, the recording studio trade magazines that were available back then. There was only 2 or 3 at the time. So there was a guy who was a famous hypnotist in San Diego a long time ago, before most of you were born, named Dr. Michael Dean. He had a recording studio in the basement of an apartment building in Point Loma. And my buddy and I from this band went to him and said, hey, you know, we'd like to run your studio for you. We'll record all of your needs, because he did Success Motivation tapes, and he would record them and put them onto cassette and sell them. And then we would get the studio space to be able to rent out to other people and do recordings, and we could charge a fee, and we'd give him a piece of the action, we'd get the rest of it. That was a 4-track, half-inch reel-to-reel studio, the only one in San Diego, 4 tracks. Anybody jealous? So that was the beginning of the recording. I did the recording thing as a staff person. Some of you might know Signature Sound. That was a studio that used to be Studio West, and they turned into Signature. Actually, the name of that studio came from here. I was working with the guys who were doing the development of the studio. After Studio West moved out and went up to Rancho Bernardo. Did a couple of years with Sun Sound, which is up in Kearny Mesa also. I don't know. It was Peters Productions that owned the studio, but it was available for outside use. Ended up being a freelance engineer in town, working all the four big studios in town at the time were Studio West, Sun Sound, Fanfare out in El Cajon, and the one in Pacific Beach, whose name I'm forgetting. And I would work that I did almost all commercial jingles type and commercial music and one's industrial stuff. There was very little recording scene. We did demos and stuff for local bands, but nothing ever got off the ground in any serious way. Continued doing that for about 10 years, and I got a phone call from a headhunter one day, out of the blue. To this day, I don't know how they found me. But the guy said, I represent a publishing company. We're looking for a new editor to our trade magazine. Your name has come up as a candidate. And I said, okay. He said, do you mind talking for a minute? About 20 minutes later, I said, do you mind if I ask you what the name of this magazine is? It's Recording Engineer Producer was the name of it. And that magazine doesn't exist anymore. But I ended up becoming the editor of that magazine. It was distributed worldwide. It was at the time considered the leading recording studio magazine in the business. This was before Mix Magazine existed. That lasted a couple years. They pulled the plug on me. One of the things that, well, I'm going to save that for one of Steve's future questions that I think he's going to be asking. Anyhow, I thought I was going to go back in the studio, but the home studio thing was happening then, and I didn't think that I was going to be able to support my family. And one thing led to another. I ended up going into sound contracting. For those, they're now called systems integrators, a lot of them, but the same thing. Basically, we're the guys that would design and install sound systems, and now video systems and lighting systems and things like that. And every type of commercial facility that you can imagine: churches, schools, sports venues, performing arts theaters, casinos, hotels. The list just goes on and on and on. And every single one of those businesses uses sound. Every single one of them, whether they need it or not, they use sound. And most of them need people to run the sound or operate the sound. So just keep that in mind. One of the things that I want to get this out now, because I'll probably forget about it later, is that one of these days, those of you who want to be recording engineers for life are no longer going to want to be recording studio engineer. But you're going to want to branch out to another path. There's lots of other paths. And that's part of what we're here for tonight, is to talk about the career paths. Anyhow, went into sound contracting, ended up working at a few, had my own business for a while. That was too much to do as a 1 or 2 man operation. So I did go to work for someone else. The company that I retired from full work was Sound Image up in Escondido. Some of you might know that name. I was their general manager of their contracting division for a few years. Mainly, I was a system design guy and an acoustician. And the acoustics started, my passion for acoustics started back in the recording studio days, and it hasn't left yet. And to this day, even though I'm mostly retired, I'm still getting calls to do acoustics. That's where we are today, and I think that's enough said for now. Thanks.
Nice, thank you. So I've got a series of questions that I'll just open up to the panel so people want to jump in. The first thing I want to talk about is the idea of the role of education in all this, given that we're in a school and these are students in audio programs. School has played a different role for, I'm sure, everybody on the panel, for myself. I don't think I fully know Mike and Bob's full background. I did go to school, but not for audio engineering. And I think that there's kind of a distinction in generations about the role of education in audio. Back in the day, you would just knock on a studio door and hope that they liked you, and then they would let you in, and then you proved yourself. That was your audio education. It was a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea. But now there's programs. There's programs galore. I've been teaching in them for the past 25 years or so. So just randomly, and I'm curious about your notions of how education was a part of, or maybe not a part of, who you are today and what you do.
Yeah, once again, I'd like to reiterate, I literally started in this very room. Education was very important for me. I had the passion, but I needed the technical behind me as well too. So yeah, I mean, in this very room, it started. I took kind of, I didn't do the certificate. You know, kids do the certificate. I just kind of pick and choose what I needed. That would benefit for me in my journey. Um, I should probably go back and get that certificate now that I think about it. I just kind of, got my base set in this very room. And then one cool thing about the union is they provide education. So if you want to be, a sound engineer, they provide, hey, we're gonna be at the Balboa Theater next week, and we're gonna learn how to set up a band, and we'll teach you, how to do a split snake, and get everything. We'll teach you how to mix monitors. I just did a wireless coordination class. I don't know, maybe about a month ago or so. We're using a lot of wireless, especially at the convention center. Um, I had no idea, and now I have wireless workbench on my iMac or on my MacBook, and yeah, I mean, I literally used it today. Um, it's really cool. The union really provided me a lot of education as well too. This provided the base, but they're more specific on industry, what you're gonna use in the industry. Um, yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I'm very thankful for the union education. We had a set up a band class at the Balboa a couple weeks ago, and I'm always wanting to learn stuff. So I applied and I was like, hey, I'll take the setting the band class. And the education coordinator looked at me and said, "No, you're a little bit above this class, but I do need an assistant." So I ended up assisting in the class. Just, making sure kids kind of knew what they were doing. Um, yeah, I mean, my education has been, kind of a 50-50 between classroom and then just on the job education. That's one thing that you won't really get in these doors is, when you're crying in a green room because you can't get reverb through some wedges, and you're working for a Ukrainian folk band and they're yelling at you and in Ukrainian, that's the kind of on the job training that you're going to get, it's how to deal with stress as well too, that in live sound, there is a lot of stress involved, and you got to know how to manage that. I like to meditate a little bit, just to kind of clear my mind. Yeah, so I mean, on the job education has been absolutely phenomenal for me.
And I'm glad you clarified that because I mean, education means a whole bunch of different things. I think in my mind I meant like formalized education and degrees, but I'm also interested in your notion of like where else do you pick up? There's on the job, and the fact that the union's got these classes and so forth is all a part of this as well.
Yeah. Also, if you have that passion, University of YouTube, there's a lot of, non-specific there's a lot of specific stuff that you can learn on YouTube. Um, you know, uh, wireless workbench, I had University YouTube open today and I had wireless workbench open because I just wanted to know, the difference between an H50 and a G50, and what frequencies they use. Um, it's and one thing about education is and one thing I like about this too is I will never stop learning. Um, I'm always out there because my goal is to be the best sound guy that they can throw at any job, Um, yeah, so I mean, just keep learning, just going off that real quick, one of my biggest regrets, I don't are you gonna pull that up?
Well, go ahead.
All right, so
Let's hear it.
one of my biggest regrets is I started 3 years ago. I really wish I'm very jealous of all the young faces that are in these seats right now because I really wish I would have been, I had that drive, but I really didn't have the know-how to like get into the industry. Just take advantage of your youth while you can and, get into the industry, and the more you learn, it's going to be great for you. Yeah, thank you.
I got my AA from Pikes Peak College back in 1987. That was in telecommunications and radio broadcasting. So we learned how to produce radio commercials, which was really interesting. You really learn, down to the frame, it's got to be dead on. And then producing newscasts and things like that. And then to this day, that education I haven't used once. I have never. It's not necessarily true. I did produce some commercials last year, but yeah, 40 years later. So, but no, I mean the education's always good. But I've spent many years on film sets now, and I see a lot of students come out of film school, and every single one of them tell the same thing: your education starts as soon as you're done with school. So, not demeaning school at all. School is great. I mean, it's the great foundation you need to learn. And also it's great for networking, building these relationships that you're going to have for years, supporting each other. It's fantastic. But like you mentioned too, your education, like putting yourself in situations where you're forcing yourself to learn. I mean, those are probably your best situations for learning because you're forced to learn and you remember it, especially live sound. I've got tons of experience with live sound over the years, and you're exactly right. I mean, you've got, there's a mic out or whatever. You have to know how to troubleshoot. There's a lot of times they don't teach that in schools, like how to troubleshoot a system, or you've got a sub out or whatever. You've got crossovers going on, whatever. I mean, so there's any number of things. So learning on the spot is fantastic. I mean, that's education that you can't even pay for, I don't think, right? So it's yeah, but yeah, that's kind of my take on schooling. But yeah, you to me, producing music only went so far, and I knew I had more in me and more I wanted to do. That's why I got into filmmaking. And for me, there's so many aspects in filmmaking, and it's endless possibilities and endless people you meet. And there's just the education is ongoing. So that's one of the greatest things I think with any of the arts that we're in, you know, be it music, video, whatever, it's endless. It's endless. You'll never get bored. There's always something else you can learn and something. And so that's probably my favorite part of all this is learning. I just love learning. For me, I didn't go to further education formally because to me, I did go back to college, major in psychology, but to me, school was so slow. It taught so slow, and I was like, I gotta go. And my wife still like yells at me all the time. She goes, "You have that ability to learn things extremely quickly, and sometimes I unfairly put that on others." And but that's just who I am. It's like keep up, keep up. And but you're going to run into people like me in the industry, and you got to keep up. So, and like you're saying, that pressure is a good thing. Definitely a good thing.
So education. I've taken the attitude of, you know, I'm trying to be in this industry that's creative and competitive and really intense. You're going to work really, really hard for not very much money. And so I've kind of taken the attitude of like whatever info I can collect, I should collect it. And so, you know, I did do the 4-year liberal arts undergrad degree. Since then, you know, I've taken on a lot of opportunities to learn on the job and, you know, otherwise, like for fun a few years back, like right before COVID hit, actually, I finished it, but I did a electronics technician degree at the community college around here. And I just did that so I could learn how, you know, my equipment works and work on it and mod stuff if I wanted to, build stuff if I wanted to. And I'm really glad I did it. I don't use it as much as I thought I might because, you know, I get busy and then whatever. But I'm really glad I did that. I'm in grad school right now, so I've definitely taken on a lot of the formal education stuff. But it is true, like there are a lot of things, like it's almost like you'll learn kind of different things when you're in school versus when you're on the job. And so that's kind of why I've, you know, sought out both situations as I've gone. And I remember one of my friends, well, this guy that I knew really in high school, his dad was an actor, a successful actor, and he came to like one of the like what is it called? The job fairs. He came to one of the job fairs, and he's like, if you want to be in an industry like this, you know, if it's entertainment or whatever, he's like, you have to just keep learning, just keep learning. And that's what I think about. So, you know, I've been doing that. Yeah.
Schools are
trying.
schools are great places to screw up. On
Yeah.
a set with Rich is not. So, you know, this is a safe place for you to push yourselves and to try things. Doing that on the job is hard.
Let's see. Well, I have no formal education in terms of a degree. Music major for a year at Grossmont College, and I am alumnus. Is that the right tense or something? Of San Diego City College. I took electronics and broadcasting for a year. Actually got on the dean's list with a 4.0, first and last time in my life. Never finished. Never really used much. I did a lot of jingle work in the studio, so the broadcasting thing was mildly related. The electronics was helpful because of all the electronics we deal with in the audio business. One of the few things that my father told me that has stuck with me all these years, and I told myself I'm going to find a place to fit this into this thing tonight, and that is that, you know, when you figure out what you want to do, don't worry about deviating from the main path, but stay on the main path in general, because the vocabulary stays, the connections stay, the all the peripheral stuff stays in place. You don't have to relearn it. If you're a sound person, an audio person, and all of a sudden you get married and you decide, you know, you can't take this anymore, I'm going to go be sell insurance or something. You're starting from scratch. If you can figure out a way to stay in the audio lane somehow, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, your front of house, your A1, your, you know, first call studio engineer, you own your own studio, you can be in marketing, you can be in related things that are audio, sales, on and on and on. Try to figure out a way to stay on that path if this is really what your passion is, because everything that you are learning now and you'll learn along the way will stay with you as you continue to grow. At the end of the day, you get to be my age. I still am shocked at the stuff that I don't know. And I've been learning for a long time. In terms of my education, it's mostly reading technical books and trade magazines. And there's not too much in the way of paper trade magazines now. I do a lot of writing for ProSound Web. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's mostly live sound related, but it covers all kinds of topics from studio to live to acoustics to whatever else. So ProSound Web and Live Sound International are sister publications, and I think their third one is called Church Sound. So that's the way I learned. Besides on the job training and teaching myself, is a lot of reading back when YouTube didn't exist.
Nice. So sticking on this path, this conversation about like divergence from path, what was the most sort of unexpected thing, if you think back in your career about what you thought you were going to be and what you are? Is there any point in your time that you were like, well, I never thought that was going to happen? You know, you have this notion, like Michael, you were talking about, I want to be this when I grow up. And so you go in that direction, you know, and I think this is also something I want a lot of people in here to think about, is you have this notion of, I want to be this thing. And there comes a point in your life where you get exposed to something and it blows your mind. And you never thought it possible that this would be something you were in. So do you have you don't, not everybody has to answer all my questions from where on up. If you feel like you have something to add to that.
I don't mind starting. When I got the call from the headhunter, blew my mind. Complete change of direction from being a basically first call freelance studio guy in town to being the editor of an international scope trade magazine about recording studios. And I told the guy when I'm doing this interview on this first phone call, there was interviews and all that kind of stuff. And I'm absolutely convinced I was not the most qualified. I think I just outdanced everybody else at the end of the day. And I was passionate about it. The idea, because I grew up, I told you about learning from trade magazines. That REP was the magazine that I learned the most from, because it was a very technically based trade magazine. It wasn't all about marketing and PR like a lot of the stuff is now. It was all about the nuts and bolts of recording studios and acoustics. And when the guy told me there was REP, that they were looking for an editor, boom, that happened. I got off the phone, went and told my wife what was happening, and talked to my brother and my father-in-law, who was an editor of one of the editors of the Denver Post, not the editor. And we just decided to go for it, pulled out all the stops that we could think of. And like I said, I think I just outdanced everybody to get the gig. And it was an amazing gig. I got to travel around the world and go to all the trade shows and meet all the manufacturers. And it was 80-90% studio focused magazine with live sound also. And stay in 5-star hotels and eat in 5-star restaurants. And I was encouraged to host people from Sony and from Yamaha and from all the British companies and the American companies and stuff like that. Take them out to dinner, take them to play golf, do all this kind of stuff. It was amazing. And then it went away like that. Got a phone call. We've decided to go in another direction. 2 weeks. No, I think they gave me 4 weeks. But I had to sort of go, okay, now what? Another fork in the road. But I stayed in the audio path. So
Nice.
that was my. I've had a couple, but that was a pretty important one. Yeah.
My well, being so new to the industry, every day is unexpected. I'm grateful for every gig I get. But my most unexpected thing actually happened a couple weeks ago. I got a call for the USD tailgate party. They were doing like their homecoming tailgate party, and I was working with Sound Image, and they had a grade A1, and I was just kind of doing my thing. I'm very meticulous in what I do, and I like to think I do a good job. And at the end of the gig, the A1 came up to me and he's like, "Hey, I have a festival next week," which was last weekend. Um, I need an A2 that has 2 brain cells rubbing together. Can you come up to Santa Clarita and work this festival for me? It's a hip hop festival." And I was like, "Yeah," not even thinking about, how am I going to get there? Are they going to cover my room and board? Absolutely, I'll be there. So yeah, I show up and I look at the bill and it's Bone Thugs and Harmony, Too Short, Exhibit, DJ Leva, so yeah, me just busting my butt on a gig, unexpectedly me got this festival gig. And next thing you know, I'm troubleshooting for Exhibit's management. Like, "Hey, can we get video and audio playback for our intro video?" And they got some pushback from production. And it's like, we can totally do that. It's not that hard. I don't know why they're telling you that. Let me see what I can do. Exhibit, hold on. I got you. Just let me do my thing. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And yeah, and I worked it out. We got them their video playing, and Exhibit's manager came up to me, totally unexpected, and said, "Zac, great job. I can't wait to work with you again." Crazy. This all stemmed from me doing a good job coiling cables in the dirt at USD. It totally unexpected. I'm handing Bone Thugs and Harmony microphones. There you go, Mr. Dizzy Bone or whoever. Totally unexpected, and I absolutely love it. When I first started this, I would have had no idea that would have been, part of a gig. It wasn't a union gig; it was for a different production. But that union gig got me the exposure to other production companies and saying, "Hey, Zac," or "Hey, you're awesome. Come work for us." And I busted my ass. I worked 36 hours in a 48-hour period. It made me so appreciative of these cushy union gigs where I ride the fader for 4 microphones and call it good.
That's what Bob is doing right now, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's totally unexpected. I never thought, I would be handing microphones to Too Short.
That's cool. I love these stories. Here I was, I used to have hair down to here, this rocker kid back in the 80s sitting in my room. And then you fast forward 3 years ago, I got a deal to be the director of photography for an Amazon series, $10 million Amazon series. And this little thing, COVID, got in the way. So it's on hold. They assure me it's still going to happen, but you never know. I started off in audio, loved audio, but then, you guys are all at the foundation. It's all building blocks. You'll probably all take different career paths, but just you get out of it what you put into it. So hustle. It's all about hustle. It's making yourself known, is being present, being out there, being someone that they can call, that they can rely on you. It's one of the biggest things. It's just be reliable.
Show up on time and be sober.
Oh,
that's
yeah. Well, be a professional.
Yeah.
Be a professional. But yeah, I mean, I started off loving audio, and it took me a whole different path. And now, and in that deal memo, I got to direct at least one episode. because that's where I really want to be. So it took many, many years to keep discovering new things that I liked, new things that I was good at. So, so what you may fall in love with now, 20 years from now, you may be doing something completely different, but this is all your foundation. So enjoy every little success along the road.
Yeah, that's true. Because I feel like my journey's been like, started wanting to do this kind of stuff and then like kind of swirled around doing this and that and then like kind of come back to it. I don't know. But yeah, the showing up things like for real. Like I think I see a lot of students, especially who it's like they're afraid to submit something or they're afraid to show up or they're afraid of whatever to start it because they're worried they're not going to do it perfectly. And it's like it goes a long way if you just show up and do your best and keep trying to learn, and you don't have to be perfect, but just keep trying. And I don't know, I didn't answer the question. Cool. Yeah.
All right. So, what was the kind of hardest lesson that you learned through this? Something that was just like it hurt, but it helped.
Hard to make money.
Did you say how to make money?
Yeah, it's really hard.
Well, that's where I was going.
You probably got it more figured out than I.
No, I don't have it figured. Well,
The
I got
studio
it,
stuff is
eventually
not.
did. Hardest lesson has mainly to do with money is don't compete on price. In other words, don't give yourself away. If you're worthy of doing something that's being paid, you should make at least what everyone else is charging for it. B is that it took me a long time to understand how much more I needed to charge for anything than what I could collect and spend in the next 30 days in terms of cost of doing business, taxes, insurances, the list goes on and on and on. I also suggest someday when you think the time is right, get a good CPA. Those people can be very helpful. You can find one that you can talk to and get along with and all that. But yeah, I think the hardest lesson for me to learn was to charge enough. And now I tend to charge too much intentionally to avoid taking on things I don't want to. if you know what, so I'll be locally. My rate's $120 an hour. To go to LA, it's 160. If there's two gigs and I got to be decide between one, I'm taking the San Diego gig because I hate driving in LA. I mean, things like that. Figure it out now. Don't wait until I was 40 or something before I started that stuff really started sinking into me. Don't compete on price and think through what else that, you're charging somebody whatever it is an hour to be a studio engineer. What's the going rate these days?
Yeah.
The middle of the road.
Probably.
How much?
Yeah, but probably about $50.
Okay, so
50, 60.
if you think you're a $50 an hour talent, then charge $50 an hour. If you think you're a $75 an hour talent, then charge 75. And yeah, you might lose a few gigs, but that's my advice.
I think one of the things that I've encountered pretty much unilaterally throughout my career, and when you're in music and film and all that, there's a lot of flakes. There's a lot of people that overpromise, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I think that's the hardest thing because you have to be resilient and you have to, I had a producer that we talked about project for 6 years and I got to the point, man, this guy's full of shit. This is never going to, and then I have a couple of guys that work with me like, dude, let this guy go, get rid of it. And I got to keep, because someday it might pay off. So, that did pay off after 6 years. A few months ago, we secured a deal for $2.5 million to make a film. So, perseverance, there's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of ups and downs in this business. But you just you got to see the bigger picture. You got to see the end goal. You got to keep going. You're going to hit a lot of road bumps along the way. You got to persevere. You just got to keep going. And I think, you know, he was saying, know your worth, know your value. You know, the best piece of advice I think I ever got was never feel guilty for earning money. It doesn't matter what that amount is. Don't feel guilty, you know, that you're, oh, maybe I'm not worth that, you know, $50 an hour. Like you said, if you feel you're worth it and you can back it up, then do that. And you'll be surprised at the amount of people that accept that. And because sometimes if you don't charge enough, they don't think you're that good, you know? So that's things to keep in mind as well.
I've talked enough. I'm gonna set this one out. Thank you.
You're here to talk, so feel free. Where was I here? Is there anything that you would have done differently on your path?
I would have started much younger. That is my biggest regret, is not starting and just following my heart, man. You know, this industry requires a lot of heart, and I knew I was made for this kind of, and I just didn't pursue it. You know, I was a bartender for a while. I delivered adult entertainment for a while. You know, I always knew I wanted to do this, but I always thought you had to know somebody who knew somebody, or, you know, you had to like be, you know, born into it with nepotism and, you know, but the union's not like that anymore. We are just so welcoming and just looking for just young talent. You know, I just wish I would have started this a lot younger, and, you know, when my body was a little bit fresher. You know, some days getting out of bed, it's like, oh yeah, Zach, you are over 40. Yeah, I mean, just follow your heart, man. You know, you guys are in this room for a reason, because you love this. Just do it, you know? Just go out there, learn, and just do it, man. That's all I can say, is just follow it. You know, you that's why you're here, is because you love this. Now go out, prove yourself, and make some money, you know? I think I answered your question.
I think it's such a great question, because I was actually thinking about that earlier. And I don't think there's anything that I wish I did sooner, because I look at it, it was all building blocks to where I am now. Each phase I went through, when I was in that phase, I absolutely loved being there. I loved producing music. I loved performing live. I loved doing music videos. I did that for years and years. I loved doing that. And then there was more. And then when I got into feature filmmaking, then it's like, oh, this is kind of like the top of the mountain. You know, each journey was getting me to this point. So everything was valuable. So I don't think I really had any, you know, I look back, I go, oh, if I had started filmmaking in my 20s, you know, 20 years before, I don't know where I'd be now. You know, I might have just been out of the industry. I don't know. So I like the progression I went through. So I think, you know, the point to that is just enjoy each phase and learn from it, because you never know what's going to be next. And hopefully it's something better. Hopefully it's always something better, because that's what you're working toward, right? So, yeah, I think it's a great question, though. You know, never regret where you're at. If you don't like where you're at, change it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like Zach did. I mean, make a change. You know, it's about the hustle.
Exactly.
I think for me, I guess my thing would be, I guess having more confidence, and then in a kind of a weird way, like having more social confidence. Like for the longest time, I kind of took the angle of, it's kind of like the Steve Albini approach thing, where you're like doing the technician side of it and you're the engineer, and that's all you are, and you do not stray into, you know, the producer lane or anything like that. And I was at this women's audio mission event in LA, yeah, recently, and there's this woman there, and she's a producer, and she did this whole talk, and I was talking to her afterwards, and she's actually, I think she's nominated for a Grammy this year, and I can't remember, but she was really cool. And she was talking to me, and she was like, oh, you know, and I told her a little bit about what I'd been doing and my history, and like how I was an engineer, and she's like, I was talking to her about what I was currently doing with my clients, and she was like, that's producing. You need to call yourself a producer. Like, especially women, we're not calling ourselves producers enough. And so she was like, you need to, like, you're not allowed not to anymore. And I was like, okay. But she said something, she was like, you know, there's some dude out there who barely knows how to make a MIDI track that's like calling him a producer right now. And you're sitting here and you've been like, you know, whatever. So I think it'd be like that kind of thing. And since I've started embracing that more, it's like more of that kind of work has come towards me. And it's so much fun to do that. It's like so much fun to work on building up a song with someone and actually taking that kind of a role. So I think just kind of not being afraid to, I don't know what the takeaway is there. I don't know. No, yeah, something like that. Yeah, thanks.
No regrets, many frustrations. Lots
Yeah,
of
maybe
roads.
that's a better way, because it is. My
Yeah.
question was definitely about regrets, but it's Rich, I think, and I'm sorry, Michael, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but your point about if you regret where you are, then make something different happen. But I think frustrations, and I think the struggles and the things that we've had to overcome, that maybe it's not, and there's the lessons learned that are in there, and all of those things sort of tie in together. But yeah, I'm sorry, Michael, please go ahead.
I was done.
Nice.
His regret is he didn't get to continue.
So we're going to open us up to questions in just a few minutes. I think I guess these are kind of tied in, this set of questions. What advice would you give yourself from way back when? So you're here now, you've seen it all happen. You look back to that day when you went, I'm going to be an audio. And what do you want to tell yourself back then? And then that can be tied into advice for the youngins and the not so youngins that are just getting started in this field. What do you want to say to yourself from back in the day?
Just trust your gut. I really, once again, I really wish I would have started this 20 years ago. And I knew like I said, I always knew I wanted to do this. I just never had an in, and the union provided me that in. Just trust your gut, do what your heart tells you to do. And, you're going to live a better life with a clear conscience, essentially, without the regret of, hey, I should have, would have, could have. Just go out and do it. Yeah, I mean, I think I answered your question. I totally forgot the question. So just for the record, I had during my mental health journey, I had electroconvulsive therapy. If you ever seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they basically shocked my brain 12 times, and it was like hitting the reset button on life, and I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for that therapy. So unfortunately, it kind of messed up my short-term memory a little bit. So I always have a Sharpie on me, and I do have short-term memory issues sometimes, and that's kind of I don't regret getting the procedure, but I do regret, not paying attention to the side effects, and sometimes my memory goes a little bit. Yeah. Anyway, I think I answered your question. Yeah.
I was thinking, what would I tell my younger self? Oddly enough, I was this guy always on stage, bigger than life, always playing. But when I was around crowds, when I was around events like this, I was a nervous wreck. I was really like, so I think the thing that I would tell my younger self is, as you get older, you really, I think for me at least, I learned the importance of networking. I learned the importance of being part of a group, being part of, this network and this fabric of the creatives. And so I think I probably lost a lot of ground over the years from not, networking, being out at events and meeting people and making more opportunities like that. So because the industry really is built on that, especially film work. So if anyone, gets into filmmaking and sound for film, it really is about, I coined a new phrase because I haven't heard this, but the phrase that it's not what you know, it's who you know. Throw that away. It's who knows you.
Exactly.
It's who knows
Sorry.
you. Make yourself known. Get out, shake hands, meet people, make yourself known. And when I changed that philosophy like a decade ago, that's when things really started opening up for me. So I think that would be like the best piece of advice for my younger self and for everyone here. 'Cause that's really how the industry works. It's who knows you, and who you know, but it's who knows you.
And what they think of you.
Of course, that's what I mean. Yeah, all around. Like, who knows you? Who knows your body of work? Who knows your personality? Who knows your professionalism? All those things. That's what I mean. All encompassing. Who knows you? Who you are as an artist, who you are as an engineer, as a business owner. And that's the other piece of advice that I would always give younger people too. Take some business classes. Even if you don't want to, do it. Learn business, learn economics, just the basics at least, because you are in a business and you really need to learn how the business operates. If you don't, I mean, you can get sucked up and then you're not having any fun and you might be doing, something else and giving up on your dream. So don't do that.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, this business is a lot of feast and famine. Um, you know, November, December, are kind of the dry months for union work because there's not a whole lot of productions going on because everybody's at home with their family. Um, so you always got to make sure, you have a couple bucks squirreled away because you don't want to hit that famine and be like, oh, cool, I got, a new MacBook, but I can't afford rent this month. Um, I'm in the process right now of setting up an LLC because I'm going to start working with a local band and I want to have my own equipment. And frankly, I don't want to pay for it. I want the government to pay for it through tax deductions. So, it's the financial aspect of this as well too is, it's really important to, have your pennies straight. You got to make sure you got, the dollar, is always there. It's a feast or famine business, and, you gotta make sure you're making really smart business decisions.
Yeah. Um, I guess what was I going to talk about? I think the social thing is a huge part of it. And I've noticed that I wish I had started doing this sooner, but kind of like if I'm working with someone in the studio, not being as shy about being like quirky or weird or silly or whatever, because like it's more fun. And then there's one other part about I think I lost it again. It's gone. Um yeah, no, but it was something about like confidence and having confidence and knowing that you can have confidence and be good at your job and not know everything. And I think a lot of people, they graduate school and they're like, "Okay, I'm done. I did school." And then they think that the expectation is that they need to know everything to do their job, and, you're not. Like, there's so much you're gonna learn, and, that's half the fun, and that's, why I love it, right, is that you can keep digging into it and keep learning. So I think knowing that you can be confident without knowing everything is a good thing.
Sales. I used to hate that word. My story about sales goes back to when I was a sophomore in high school. I wanted to be an architect, and I went to a career seminar a little bit like this. And the guy who was leading the class was an architect, and somewhere along the line, he said, architecture is really about 90% sales and about 10% design. And my brain just shut off like that. And it took me decades to embrace the idea that sales, even in the industry of recording or music on any level, isn't selling a widget, isn't knocking on doors, selling vacuum cleaners or salve or something. I don't know what they sell door to door anymore, but that'd be Amazon, wouldn't it?
There's, like, solar people.
Yeah, sales is being able to communicate. You're selling yourself. Communicate who you are, what you've done, what you're capable of to somebody so that they can be enthusiastic about working with you. that's the sales angle in a lot of industries, but in this industry, I think it holds true. And it took me a long time to embrace the idea of being a sales engineer. I hated that even, decades later, but I realized, quite a bit of time ago that I was not selling products. I was selling ideas. I was selling myself. I was sharing my vision with somebody of how, the reason that they've contacted me or gotten in touch with me one way or another is because they think that I might have something that I can bring to the table. And the sales element of that is being able to communicate what it is that you have to offer, and what maybe the benefits would be of working with you as individuals, or what the end product might look like. I've done a lot of systems design. I think I mentioned that earlier, and one of the things that I noticed is sometimes salespeople would go out and say, "Well, I can't tell you any of the details. You got to sign the contract and give me some money first." That's never the way I played. To me, I would tell them everything I could think of, and share the vision with them. And probably 8 times out of 10, I'd get the gig and somebody else wouldn't, because I wasn't holding back, expecting somebody to sign a contract without having a good understanding of what it was that they were going to be getting. So sales is not necessarily a bad word. You just need to know how to translate it to what you're doing.
I think a lot of it's like sharing enthusiasm too.
I I kind of treat every gig as an audition for my next one, you know? I just see it as, hey, I'm selling myself every gig. This is what I can do. I can handle this, blah, 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 blah. I'm selling myself that I can work under that pressure.
I'm talking about that first interaction in particular.
So let's go ahead and open this up to questions. Mike, if I'm not mistaken, if they want to get onto the YouTube video, they need to speak into a microphone, right? Okay.
As a sound engineer, that
Hello,
sounds,
Yeah,
that
well,
sounds about right.
I mean, that's how this works, right? Okay, so if we've got any questions for the panel, Joshua?
This is kind of directed towards Rich, because I'm not sure how to really word this question, but it's like I want to do it all. Like I'm in music and film, and it's like I'm trying to figure out how to balance everything, like because I'm still in the mindset where it's like, oh, you have to focus on one thing if you want to be successful. You can't multitask, I want to direct, I want to script write, I want to do photography, camera work, I want to produce, be talent, act,
Mhm.
and it's like I feel like I'm all jumbled. I'm just trying to figure out like how do I mix
How to
all this
manage it all.
together?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like
Well, it's being well-rounded. I know it's your
Mhm.
question. Being well-rounded, not multitasking.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, everyone has to find their own method. I religiously, if you stacked my legal pads over the years, they'd probably be like the height of the Empire State Building. Every day I write, physically write, and I make lists. So I get that out of my head every day, but I go back to it. I go, I want to do this. I want to do that. So for me, it's compartmentalizing, and it's having a methodology to achieve those goals and time management. But as far as doing it all, because I look at myself as more of a well-rounded filmmaker, because I've spent years on sets, doing sound or doing lighting or doing every single thing I could. I jump in for free if I had to, even in my 40s, and all that pays off eventually. But filmmaking, there's so much to learn. I mean, it can get overwhelming, but just allow yourself time, you know. But just really, attack, like what's the things you like the most? What's your favorite aspect of film and sound creating? So like something in your head, Okay, so and following that path, because we're cut from the same cloth on that. Because I always would have a vision, but it's understanding how to take that vision and each step to achieve your goal. So I would always write down my goals. So like right now, I mean, today, I'm working on a treatment for 2 different feature films, and we already have funding for one of them, but I'm writing the next one so we have a backup or another one to get into production right after that. Then I go into a different phase. So I try to focus chunks of time on each aspect as I go. So I was working on a workshop, like I can mention that, right? Okay, so if you guys want, if you're interested, I'm doing a workshop at UCSD Park and Market on Friday afternoon, 3 to 5 p.m. And it's full session in DaVinci Resolve sound design. How the whole put this whole scene, it's about a 3-minute scene. And I'll show you step by step all the sound effects, laying out tracks. It's basically for like beginner intermediates, but I think anybody could learn a lot from that. But to go back to your question, it's just a matter of finding your own way of doing that, and don't be in a rush. You got time. It's a journey. It's not a sprint, you know? And the main thing is do it every day. If you have your phone, you have whatever, just film, make ideas, just practice, 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 because that's ultimately what will pay off. You just have to do it every day. You got to live it. You have to be completely, I mean, I've had times in my life where been completely absorbed with it. I mean, I have 20-hour days. I've on set 18-hour days. I didn't eat, didn't go to the bathroom, not because I'm so obsessed with it and love it, and it's really, really rewarding in the end. It's a tough biz, but persevere, man, and you can definitely do it. Anybody can do it. It's just the sky's the limit. So I don't know what else to tell you, but I mean, you got to go for it. I think Robert Rodriguez, you're familiar with Robert Rodriguez, right? Director, did Spy Kids, did yeah, Desperado. I mean, on and on and on. But watch some of he has an inspirational series talking, and he says the same thing. He's like, quit talking about it, get out and do it. Like seriously, get out. Like tomorrow morning, wake up, shoot for half an hour, whatever. Work on camera angles, work on stories. You want to act, jump on every set you can. I mean, you got to make yourself known. You got to get out there and just do it every day. Yeah. Yeah.
Questions?
So I guess this is for everyone on the panel. Being a woman in the industry, it's been a struggle because of a lot of the gendered expectations and the misogyny that is still very present. And I have found that I've had to prove myself 100 times over, more so than my male counterparts. And even as recently as working at the Conrad over the summer. But Zac, it was a pleasure working with you. So grateful that I got to meet you in front of house. But with that said, how would you guys recommend pursuing or continuing navigating this journey in an industry that is set up for the men to be more successful versus the women or non-binary people who choose to go down this road?
I was actually the union's second pick. I'm actually sitting in a woman's seat right now, unfortunately. I wish Heidi could have been here. She is the A1 over at the USD Epstein Amphitheater. The union, from my perspective, the union is very inclusive. Gender doesn't matter. A gig's a gig. If you prove yourself, it doesn't matter if, you know, e- economic status, anything. That's one thing I really like about the union is it's very inclusive. Non-binary, I work with everybody, I work with everybody across the spectrum. Yeah, I mean, the union is very, very welcoming to everybody. That's all I can really say about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, being white male, I'm like probably the worst one to ask that. But but the thing of it is, for me, I God's honest truth, I've never looked at I look at everyone equal. What do you bring? Do you bring value to my production? I've had many people, men, that I don't ever ask back. They're on my blacklist because they're cancers on set. They either act like they know everything or they're demeaning. I'm like, we're all here to achieve the same goal. Like, so when we're doing a film production, because I'm mentioning that because that's where we employ more people on set. So sometimes we had a project we did not too long ago, Burbank, was 34 people on set. And my crew's probably well over 50% women. Especially in the last couple of years, has been a real, spike in women, getting a stronghold, foothold. I mean, look at Greta Gerwig. It's a great example. But so I think you'll find that the old boys club is starting to diminish more, and I think there's more people they're going to be judging you on your quality and what you bring to the table. If they're not, find new people to work with. Because it should be inclusive. I mean, we're all here telling stories, on set. There's a great, we had someone, I had talked with her many times and real quiet. And she was very, I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And she goes, well, I really want to be a first AC, which is a first assistant camera, to pull focus, things like that. I hired her for my next film and she was amazing. And I pulled her aside later. I said, I want you on every production. So the point is not that she was a woman or man or whoever, like she brought value to the production. And that's what I look at. And the people that I've worked with and professionals I've worked with, I haven't seen a lot of that. So, I mean, I hear that all the time. And I have a hard time understanding because I haven't been exposed to it, which is odd because I don't think that way. Like, oh, I just got to hire a bunch of men for this. I've never thought that way. It's like whoever's best for the job is who I hire. So, I wish more people had that mentality, but so I'm sorry I haven't been exposed to that as much, but I hear it all the time and it still like shocks me because I don't really see it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I think it's a lot of insecurity.
yeah,
Like they're insecure and they feel threatened.
and a lot of
Yeah.
I think a lot of men mean well. You guys mean well. But there's a lot they don't see, like we were talking about the assumptions thing earlier, and it's like some of that's subconscious. They don't, people don't see it. They don't realize it's there unless like you are the woman or whatever. And I think one of the big things, like I've thought a lot about this, and one of the big things for me, I think, is mentorship. And there's been a lot of research into career progressions. So, not just getting the introductory job or whatever, but actually progressing up towards the top. And usually when people do that, they have extensive mentorship. So they find someone who is above them who can teach them how things work, right? And the thing about that is that if you're one of the only women in the room, you're going to be less likely to be chosen as a mentor because they've done scientific research on this. People tend to choose mentors that look like them. And this goes for like any kind of minority. And so, and like I had a boss once who, he wouldn't, his girlfriend was very anxious because he was not used to working with women, right? And so all of a sudden there's a woman working with him and his girlfriend got really stressed. And it was like, I'm already married. Like I'm not, I'm not a threat, I promise. And but so like he would not be able to have mentorship meetings with me where it was one-on-one because of this relationship, right? And so things like that happen and you may never be told about it, right? Like I was told about this instance, but you may never be told about it. And so then it's just going to be path of least resistance. The guy might choose another guy just because of that. And some of that has to do with, I'm sure different generations, the attitudes about that are changing about like, whether man and woman can be alone in a room or whatever, right? That's kind of old fashioned sounding, but some people still think that way. And I think like that's a big part of it. And then also like being vocal about stuff, asking questions. I used to work at one of the very big studios in North County, and I asked everyone else that had the same job as me what they were making, and they were all making 3 times as much. And I had more experience than any of them by years. And so I went to the owner and asked about it, and they didn't do anything about it, but their reasoning was because they had bought a product that I did not buy. So I didn't think that was a good reason. But like that stuff happens. So it's like the whole thing about asking asking questions about how things are being run. And then being a pain in the ass sometimes about it if it's like not cool. But like, it's like that's scary when you don't have any power. I'm only just now openly talking about that stuff because it's like now I feel like, oh, what am I gonna lose? But yeah, I think mentorship is a big thing. And so as more women enter, there are more, that's evening out with the mentorship thing, which then helps because when I started out, it was like I was almost everywhere I worked, I was the only female. And if there was another woman, she was like in management side of the studio or something like that, not engineering. And so, it's like there were fewer opportunities to get any kind of mentorship. So like all my mentors were male, and they're all great, but yeah, I feel like I had one other thought, but maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Oh, that's right.
We have some people, some viewers on YouTube who are sharing their questions. I'm just going to read one out for starters. How do you make yourself known? What are some good ways to do that?
Make a reel. Make a reel of your work. You get sound samples whatever projects you work on. I did this, I did this, I did this. Make a reel. Get those reels out there. Network. Go to events. Talk to people. Have a card, or well, I mean, what do we do now? Like your phone, whatever. You communicate with people. Get your info out there.
I think of Instagram as a business card now too.
Yeah. It's funny because I love that you mentioned that because I was talking to some guys on a set, some younger guys, and they were like, "Oh, Instagram," and they said, "Oh, we get these little like $200 gigs here and there and there." And I said, "But you have to string together like 60 of those, right?" And I go, "Well, old fogey, I still use Facebook, and in the last year, I made $75,000 off of Facebook connections because a lot of those old people that are on Facebook still have a lot of money." So you got to think about economics of it too. So I'm saying, I mean, I've never generated anything from Instagram, but I don't really use it that well. I'm kind of old, but but anyway.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, for me, it's been writing. So there's writing about a project or an experience that you think might be interesting to somebody, and because I have this relationship with ProSound Web, and they basically publish anything that I write. But it's interesting because people around the world pick up on that, and unlike these people on let's see, that would be the north side of the table here. I'm a LinkedIn kind of guy, so I get a lot of. I shouldn't say a lot because I'm really not looking for a lot, but I get the occasional call because somebody will see that I've written something. When I write something and it gets published, I put it on LinkedIn, and then people will contact me. And I've gotten calls to do acoustics in Serbia and in New Jersey and Texas and Arkansas, and things that I can do remotely, I do remotely. So I think the point is if you have the ability or can develop the ability to write about what you're doing, there's always a need to fill content in that lane. So it's one way to get yourself known.
Coming from the union background, I'm very fortunate because the hall gets me work. But you have to be, you have to show consistency and hustle and skill to get that work. But, fortunately, I've already established myself a little bit, and I'm lucky that it's like, "Hey, Zach, we need, a quick pop-up at the Marriott or something of that nature," and they know they can count on me. Yeah, and also, kind of piggybacking off Instagram, I was working with a A1, and they pin projects that they've worked on to their Instagram. So if you just go like, "Hey, here's my Instagram," the first thing they see is all these shows that you've worked on. And that's basically, the new digital business card is Instagram. And that's kind of that was kind of a cool little, life hack, or little way to drum up more businesses. So I've actually started doing that, and this event was actually one of my first pins, to, just to show it's like, hey, this is who I am. I've been on a board, a representation board or a panel. I'm sorry. I've been on a panel, and now I'm going to start, posting pictures of, productions I've worked on. It's like, hey, I've worked with this Grammy Award winning artist. I've, worked with Louis Cato. It's Instagram is basically the new business card, and it's just adapting to the changing times. But like I said before, I'm very fortunate where the union gets me my work.
Oh, I think you're like totally right, and it comes back to also the not being afraid to brag a little bit about what you've done, because it's like there's someone else out there who's going to brag about what they've done, so you might as well do it.
Sales,
Sales, yeah.
Sales.
And then like it's all in my mind, it's all just sharing enthusiasm. Like you're really enthusiastic about this, or you wouldn't be doing it, right? Otherwise, we'd all just go into whatever makes more money, right? But enthusiasm.
Yeah.
The cable long enough, yeah. Get a little bit closer.
We get a little bit.
Yeah, so I think it's safe to say that most of us here, we listened to music and then we became really passionate just by listening to it, and we wanted to do something with that. And along the way, we make compromises to turn that passion into a living. I was just wondering, what's your guys' relationship with your passion projects? And do you do stuff on the side just because you're really passionate about it? Do you feel that your creative outlet is fulfilled with things that you're doing? I was just curious about what your relationship is with the passion that first fueled you into making this into a career.
Every film I do is a passion project. I've turned every passion project into dollar signs. I didn't do it, from the beginning. It took many years to learn how to do it. But now I've gotten to the point, everything I work on is a passion project. I'm passionate about every single thing I work on, which is, I think, the ultimate goal. That's where it kind of goes back to, you have any regrets? Like, well, I probably wouldn't have been here if I hadn't gone through all those steps to get to this point and learn.
I got an MPC at home. I grew up, playing punk rock drums, and I make beats. That's kind of my, unfortunately I live, with San Diego. I live in a studio apartment. Unfortunately, I don't have the room for a full-blown drum set, but I got my MPC right there, and I can make a beat. That's kind of my creative outlet. And then I just delete it, and I just do it again. It's fun. I probably have like 5 beats saved on my MPC that I've created. And then
You should come over. We can just record them. Then you can just keep them.
no, it's soothing to me. I put this energy out, and then it goes away, and then tomorrow I can do it again, and something, I'll pick up another sample and, kind of flip that.
Yeah, I started making beats in Pro Tools too, and it's so much
Ah.
fun. But I started like selling them to clients too, so it's like a in between, but it's fun. Yeah,
I got
people top line over them.
I got some lost beats that
Yeah?
yeah
collab.
yeah, for sure.
Be fun.
See, networking.
So-
what up?
I want to add something to that question, because I think part of what you're talking about is the distinction between feeding your soul, which is our passion, right? It's the music we make, it's the music we listen to, and feeding our stomachs, which is get a job, And there's one of the things about all of the a good chunk of the students that I've seen over the years come in, and I ask the question, who here wants to make money just producing their own content? And every hand goes up, right? The reality of that is very difficult. But that doesn't mean that you have to do a bunch of crap that you don't like doing. It's about finding ways to express your creativity under direction, working in audio, like Rich said, he doesn't work for anybody, but he works for every one of his clients. We all work for our clients. To work in audio is to work for somebody else, and that doesn't mean that we're selling out or giving up on anything. It means that we're passionate about what we do, And my main bread maker over the years has been teaching, and I'm passionate about teaching, so all that goes in there. But it also is this way that I can continue to feed my stomach, um, the glorious life of adjunct professor. Um, but I'm a producing artist, and it's not commercial work, and I don't make money off of it, but I'm allowed to express that part of me, and there's a community of people that understand it, and I'm part of a situation that has its own rewards. Um, but I think that's kind of what we're talking about is that distinction between how do we make money at this? How do we earn a living doing this? And it's kind of the nature of the whole concept of this panel and this panel series is that there's a lot of options for you all to think about. What are your talents? What do you love to do? And you can apply those in a bunch of different directions. If you make music, you could work for a game company. You could compose for films. There's specialized ways of thinking about composing music when you go into those different things. It's very different than writing a simple 2-chord pop song or making beats. But still, the point is that you have this notion of who you are as an artist, but you still need to earn a living. The idea of you making money solely off of being an artist, I don't know anybody in this room. I can't tell you what you're gonna be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, but I got statistics. I got lots of numbers from over the years of teaching and seeing people go through this. But that doesn't mean you can't have a rewarding career. It's about combining all of these different things and finding these different ways to apply it. Rich's story and all the stories up here are about that idea of like, I got this thing I like doing. How can I express that? And it manifests itself in so many different ways.
I feel I'm very fortunate with the union and being the A1 at the Conrad, I'm able to work with a lot of great bands. And that is my passion, is I want to mix bands. But also, I just came off of a 6-day run at a rheumatology corporate event. It wasn't the most soul fulfilling gig, laving up presenters. But today, at the end of the day, it was my 6th day. We had a meal penalty. I was making over $100 an hour. That's paying the bills. Was it the most soul fulfilling? No, not really. But also at the time, it's what you make of it as well too. I'm sure I'm behind the scenes, just waiting to lock people up. But I'm also on University of YouTube learning more about wireless frequency coordination. I had one of our dead receivers, or not dead receivers, but like one of our receivers that wasn't being used at the time, plugged it into my MacBook, and now I'm like scanning frequencies, next to the harbor to see what frequencies, we can use. It's about making the best of that downtime as well too. It's every gig's not going to be fulfilling, spiritually, but it's going to make you money, and that's what we're here for, is to make a living doing what we love.
You know what else is like the idea of how it's not always fulfilling, but there's like the idea of you're working for the client, right? And what I've noticed over the years is a lot of times when you're doing any kind of collaboration, with a client or whatever, sometimes people will recommend things that you don't want to do, right? Or you don't like the idea. But if you give it a shot and you try it, sometimes it's like everyone really likes it and you really like it. And then it ends up being something that you bring into your toolkit to use for your own creative work. So a lot of times, I feel like we have these gigs that may not feel as much like they're feeding our soul, but they add to our toolkit. So
Yeah.
you know.
One quick last thought on your question is, my passion's been acoustics since I was in my early 20s. And now I write, I think acoustic textbooks are out of date. I mean, the fundamental physics is all valid, but what isn't being written about in taught in schools is the fact that we're no longer, most acoustic textbooks are about building concert halls for symphony orchestras and how to support that energy of those instruments. The vast majority of gigs nowadays are amplified productions, and one with thousands or tens of thousands of watts of subwoofer energy, and the rooms can't dissipate that energy as fast as it gets refreshed every beat, if you will. If you're doing a kick drum at this tempo, it's 120 dB of kick drum that the room has to swallow, and they can't do it. And very few people are talking about it. And my passion project is to write about that and to write about solutions and ways to think about it and sort of try to advance the world of architectural acoustics in ways that aren't being taught in schools today. Slash teach that also to architects.
Can you teach them at the sports arena over there?
I would if I could.
And the materials too, right? A lot of the materials have changed. Like I saw a talk at NAM where they're talking about using glass instead of foam. With like tiny holes. It was so cool.
There are a few new materials, but the fundamental materials that are out there that have been around for a long time are still pretty much the same. There's a lot. There's more and more work going into really understanding how to absorb very low frequency energy.
Okay, cool.
And that's the area that I'm focused on quite a bit, is talking about that and talking about how to think about reverberation in a room. The classical the classical description of reverberation is a room is a one number. I've got a 2-second room. I've got a 1.5 room. I've got a 3-second room. How many people in here know what that number represents in terms of frequency? 2 frequencies, 500 hertz and 1 kilohertz averaged together. That's what that one number means. That's insufficient in today's market, in my opinion. And so I write about that, and that's my passion. And this all started with something called the T60 slope ratio, which is what does the slope of the reverb look like based on frequency. And in my opinion, rooms that are being built, medium and large rooms, and I'm not so much talking about studios, although we could apply this to studios, is that the reverb time at 63 hertz and 125 and 250 and 500 and 1K, 2K should be relatively flat and not have this giant boost at 63 or 125. And there's ways to deal with that, but you can't find that in any textbooks. So that's my passion project.
All right. Well, I think we've come into the end here. I want to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to come down here, sharing your experiences and your wisdoms. Again, I want to thank City College and Mike and Bob for all their work, and Jim's back there working hard too. Is he sleeping? No. Okay. And thank all of you for coming out here. One last quick bit about the Audio Engineering Society, and just ties into everything. When I moved down to San Diego about a year and a half ago from Seattle, last 20 years in Seattle. And I thought I'll join the local AES because I needed the network. Rich's point about it doesn't matter who you know, but who knows you. I knew that if I came down here, nobody knew who I was. So I looked out for AES to create a network, and the section didn't exist. I got together with a great group of people. We got this thing off the ground. But the point is that at 50 years old, yes, I had to completely start from scratch and come down here and get everybody to meet a bunch of people. I've met a lot of really fabulous people. I've gotten gigs out of it. I've gotten work. I'm building up my career. But it's the way that this world works. So I wish each and every one of you the best in your endeavors and your careers, and I hope to see you. Some of you I better see next week. And the rest of you, I hope to run into you, come out to more AES events. And I have a Facebook page for this group, and Mike's running the Instagram page. So look us up on those and get yourself on mailing lists to get more information about it. So thanks again, everybody, and have a safe and great night.
I was gonna say, what about Thanksgiving?
Let me come down there in a second. Yeah, let me come down here. I gotta move all this stuff together. Yeah, sure. I mean, when you're
I've met you before. Yeah, I know.
And I'll send you a quick text.
Yeah. Come on. Cut these.
How do you feel about